like to welcome you all to the monthly board meeting of the Greater West Bloomfield Historical Society. I'd just like to remind you that the second Sunday of every month is the museum open house from 1 to 4 p.m. And tonight we have a special presentation. We have Helen Jane Peters here, who is going to give us a presentation on the time capsule that was inside the Cornerstone of the Daniel Whitfield School in Sylvan Lake. So she's going to present the contents of that time capsule. Why don't you go ahead?
Hello, I'm Helen Jane Peters and I live in Sylvan Lake, Michigan. I've lived there all my life, and it's a joy to talk to you today about the Whitfield School Cornerstone. There has been a school on the property where Whitfield School stood from May 1852 until 2003. The school was actually closed in June of 1991 as a cost-cutting plan. But there was a school at that same site from 1852 till 1991. Whitfield School joined the Pontiac school system in July 1st, 1947. There was a vote of 209 people for the annexation and 113 people against it. In 2003, Whitfield School was torn down because it had been vacant for 12 years. At that time, the Cornerstone was opened on July 23, 2003. Many Whitfield students and teachers were present when the Cornerstone was opened. Mr. Chuck Johnson, who actually did the demolition of the building, he opened the Cornerstone and showed us everything that was in there. And at that time, I said to Mr. Johnson, I think those items really should stay in Sylvan Lake. That's where they belong. But he took everything, including the Cornerstone, back to his business and kept it for the next 4 years. This past summer in 2007, Annalee Kennedy and I met together, and she told me about a friend of hers by the name of Doris Smith, who's a preservationist in Pontiac, that Doris knows this Mr. Chuck Johnson. She made a phone call to him, and the three of us went to his office. And at that time, he showed us the Cornerstone, he opened it up, and he brought out the contents. We took them inside to a place where we could spread them out on a table and examined everything. Well, I couldn't wait to get home to actually read the things in these ledgers, read the things that were folded up, and really discover the history of Whitfield School for myself. So that day, in early August 2007, Mr. Johnson gave me these items to bring home for the city of Sylvan Lake. Well, in the Cornerstone is the Bible, and it was inscribed that it was from the Sylvan Lake Sunday School. I still don't know where that Sunday school was, but it has a date of October 16th, 1929, and that's when the Cornerstone was closed up the first time. It also included a list of all of the students at Whitfield School at that time. It's really neat that somebody typed all of their names, and then each student actually wrote their name in their own handwriting next to it. So we have a list of all the students that were in the school in 1929. We also have a list of all the teachers in that school. And as I look over this list, I know several of these people because I was a student at Whitfield School from 1944 until 1951, from kindergarten through 6th grade. But Mrs. Ruth Pudney was a very, very close friend of my mother. My mother taught at Whitfield School for 20 years. And Mr. Glenn Husted is another person on this list. Mr. Glenn Husted was a 7th and 8th grade teacher at this time in 1929, but he went on to become the principal of Whitfield School. Well, in 1971, my husband and I bought Mr. Husted's house, and we have lived in his house since 1971 for 37 years, almost 37 years. Mr. Husted was a beloved principal. All the students just really thought the world of him. The last person on the list is Mr. Gilchrist, Mr. James Gilchrist. He was a janitor in 1929, and he continued to be the janitor at Whitfield School all the time that I was a student there, which I think is really neat. Well, some other items in there was a program from the dedication of Whitfield School. This took place on August 24th, 1928, and it gives the program of everything that they did for that program. Another item in the list, in the Cornerstone was a list of who the contractors were, who were on the Board of Education, who's the architect. The Fisher brothers were the architect of Whitfield School, and it was a beautiful school when it was built, and it continued to be. The same architect also was an architect for Sylvan Lake City Hall on Inverness. So that's a list of things. There was also a picture of the previous school that was that was on the same property. This school was built in the early 1900s, and possibly even as early as 1895. And there was an article in the paper about this. A janitor called me and said he had picked up this picture from the floor after Whitfield School had been closed. And he called me and asked me if I wanted it. And of course, I said yes. Well, I hadn't noticed it, but if you look in this picture, right back here is what they call an eyebrow window. And this is the new school is right behind the old school. So they must have torn down the second school that was on that property in order to, and then Whitfield School would be showing. So this is probably the stack from the third school, and part of the window is showing. So this is a second school that was on this site. So let me tell you a little bit more. There were 3 ledgers. There was also, I'm sorry, a newspaper, Oakland Press, what we call now the Oakland Press, but this was the Pontiac Daily Press from October 15th, 1928 or 29, and it cost 2 cents back then at that time. That was also in the Cornerstone. But the prize thing are the 3 ledgers that were in this Cornerstone. The first one, the most important one, I think, is one that goes back to the meetings that the Board of Education had starting in December 1851. A group of men met on a regular basis to, first of all, plan a school, plan a school board, and then plan where the building would be, plan the funds. There had been no school at this on this site previously. It was a combination of Waterford, Pontiac, West Bloomfield, and Bloomfield Township. These 3 townships came together to form a fractional school district, number 6. So it was an independent school. It was not originally part of a school system. They started with their records in 1851, and it tells every meeting that they had through 1895 are recorded in this book. It's all handwritten. Some of it is very difficult to read, but it tells who the president was, who the director was of the school, who the assessor was. And at this time, Daniel Whitfield, for whom the school is named, he gave the land for this school to be built on this property, and that's why it has the name of Daniel Whitfield. The second one tells a little bit about the students that attended the school and what they studied, how many minutes a day they spent on reading, writing, and arithmetic. And it also gives their ages and their grades, which is very interesting. Another interesting thing is that they had a winter term and a summer term. And in the winter term, they requested a male teacher, and the summer term, they often requested a female teacher. And it seemed that every term they had a different teacher. I don't know why that happened, but that was very interesting. It gives a list of the subject that they would study in the forenoon and in the afternoon. And at that time, they even had recess. They had 15 minutes of recess. In the ledger that tells about their meetings, it also gives a list of the money that they spent. They often had to buy a dipper for the well. They had to dig a well, and so that they would have water for the school. They had to, they talked about buying chalk and the equipment that they needed for the school. So the other 2 books, this one and that one, are called the Welch System. It's classification, graduation, and close supervision of school and township records. One of them dates from December 2nd, 1890 to January 4th, 1897. And the other one dates from December 22nd, 1898 to June 1910. And looking through these records, it lists the name of the child and how old they were and what grade they were in. And sometimes there would be, in one case there was even a child, or not a child anymore, that was 21 years old and in 7th grade. So I'm assuming that they didn't just pass children at that time. They had to pass a test to go on to the next grade. In the very last page in one of them, it says, there was a record from the teacher that she said, the last page, they had to stop school 1 month early. And this is a note to my successor. I will leave a word of explanation to help you. On account of a shortage of funds in the district, the school was closed 1 month sooner than I had planned. Therefore, you can see why most of the children will be in the same grade they were in. I had planned to have them finish up their grades in the month that I did not teach, but having only a day's notice that the school would close, I had no time to prepare them for the next grade. Above, I leave you a small outline giving you an idea of what they are doing when school closed so suddenly. Hoping that you will not criticize me too harshly, I wish you the greatest success. And that's Leona McClellan. I thought that was a nice personal note that she left for the next teacher that would have these students in her class. So we are very fortunate to have these items that are a story of Whitfield School from 1851 until 1991, and then it was finally torn down in 2003. And if you'd like more information, we are meeting tonight at the Greater West Bloomfield Historical Society. The museum is open the second Sunday of every month from 1 until 4 o'clock, and you are all invited to come and see what is here in this historic place. Thank you.